Have a member certified closed session for us.
I certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, the Williamsburg-James City County School Board, while in closed session, discussed only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements as stated in Virginia law, and that only such public matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed session were heard, discussed, or considered.
Thank you for the motion, and thank you for the second. Ms. Young? Ms. Aller?
Mrs. Ortigo.
Aye.
Mrs. Young. Mrs. Donner. Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Ms. Hunley.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I
this evening?
move to approve the agenda as presented, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Hummel. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Hundley. And Ms. Aller?
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortigo.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye. All right, we'll turn it over to Dr. Herron for her superintendent's report. Thank you, Dr. Herron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last month, our social worker team hosted our second annual Spark event, supporting parents and reaching kids, in an effort to engage with families in need. At the event, families were provided food, clothing, and resources through our community partnerships, such as eye exams, haircuts, and medical resources, all in one convenient location. We were pleased to serve more than 200 families. We share our congratulations with the War Hill High School PTA, recently named a 2022 through 24 National PTA School of Excellence. School of Excellence is a recognition program that supports and celebrates partnerships between schools and families to enrich the educational experience. War Hill is just one of 368 PTAs nationwide earning this distinction. Finally, the 2023-24 school year is off to a wonderful start, and we are so pleased to have students and staff back in our buildings. Take a look at these scenes from the first week of school. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Herron. Any reports from board today? Well, I just want to say that it really was a pleasure to join you, Dr. Herron, on a few visits on the first day of school. And probably one of the most memorable ones was kindergarten class that Matthew Whaley saw your daughter, I believe, Miss Donner. But this one kindergarten student, she was just so excited for her first day. Kind of got me in trouble. I felt like she was going to get me in trouble. She walked out of the classroom to the front door where the lockers are. She just had to show me everything that was inside her locker. She was so excited. So I'm like, well, is she supposed to be out here? Come get her. But anyway, very cute, as they all are, and really excited for this school year. We'll move on to our proposed agenda items. Item 5.1, a review of amendment to the fiscal year 24 grants fund budget. Dr. Herron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Ewing is going to bring an update to our grants funds for this year. Thank you, Ms. Ewing.
Thank you, Dr. Herron. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. This agenda item is to amend our grants fund budget to reflect an additional grant that we have been awarded from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice in the amount of $210,105, which will provide funding for continued employment of school security officers at our elementary schools. The grant does have a required local match of $239,895, which we are funding through the safety and security funds approved as part of our fiscal year 22 year-end spending plan. With the addition of this grant, it will bring our total grant budget for this fiscal year to $11,990,005. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, questions for Ms. Ewing on this grant? And we currently have how many SSOs? And this is for SSOs? Correct me?
SSOs
Right.
at the elementary schools.
At the elementary school. Do we have
Are we
any at
fully
the elementary
staffed?
school?
Mr. Keever may have that number.
8 of 9.
8 of 9.
Still
At the
still
moment.
working on the 9th.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. All right, yeah. Well, thank you, Ms. Ewing. Move on to item 5.2, a textbook selection and adoption proposal for 23-24.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This evening, Ms. Ford and Ms. Mumpoint are here to present our textbook selection and adoption proposed schedule for the whole year. And so we look forward to that information this morning. Welcome for this evening.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Herron. Ms. Mompoint and I are pleased to share the Curriculum and Instruction Department's textbook selection and adoption proposed work plan for the 2023-24 school year with you today. We will begin with a summary review of all content areas included in this proposal and then provide additional details for each content area later in the presentation. At this time, we are seeking your approval of the process as we will outline it. At the conclusion of each selection process, we will bring forth the committee's recommendation for your approval, including your approval for the amount of each textbook purchase. This year, our department recommends WJCC conduct the textbook selection and adoption process to address textbook and textbook material needs for courses in 4 content areas: elementary literacy, world languages, math, and science. When prioritizing which content areas and courses to focus on in a given school year, our team considers revisions to the standards of learning by the Board of Education, the availability of course textbooks, and the age of current WJCC textbooks and textbook materials. In the case of the K-5 Literacy Core Curriculum, the prioritization of this content area is directed by legislation passed in March of 2022 by Virginia's General Assembly. We plan to distribute the selection and adoption processes across the school year based on timelines that support the scope of the review work for each course or content area and ensure the work is completed in accordance with WJCC's spending timelines. Each course or content timeline will include a community review period during which WJCC staff, parents, guardians, and community members will have access to the textbook materials under consideration to review and provide feedback using a community evaluation rubric. The C&I department will also host an evening textbook fair for each content area to provide staff and community members the opportunity to view materials and speak with curriculum leaders. The estimated cost to purchase textbooks and textbook materials for the content areas in this proposal are based on preliminary quotes provided by the vendors. As the committees review the materials under consideration for each course and make recommendations for textbook and textbook material selection, we will be able to more closely identify the expense associated with the purchase for each course. Those costs will be presented to you during the textbook recommendation presentations at the conclusion of the review processes. Our team recommends that the review committee for each content area be composed of a school board member, division staff such as a C&I director, a curriculum coordinator, and an instructional technology team member, administrators, general educators, and specialists representing the course under consideration, and parents and guardians. As previously mentioned, legislation known as the Virginia Literacy Act, initially passed by the General Assembly in the spring of 2022 and expanded through additional legislation this past March, requires that starting with the 2024-25 school year, Virginia Public School divisions deliver core elementary literacy instruction aligned to science-based reading research using evidence-based instructional practices. The legislation further stipulates that core curriculum be approved by the Virginia Department of Education. Upon the board's approval of the proposed work plan, the work of the review committee, and communication to inform staff, parents, guardians, and community members of the selection and adoption processes will begin immediately. Our goal will be to conclude this review phase prior to winter break. The work of the review committee and the evaluation rubrics will be organized according to 4 primary components. Within each component, materials under consideration will be evaluated according to specific criteria. The scope of a K-5 literacy curriculum selection and adoption process requires a large committee representative of the 6 elementary grade levels. To support a comprehensive review of each grade level materials, the members of the review committee will work in 3 subgroups. The review committee will make a final selection and adoption recommendation informed by subgroup input and feedback collected through the staff and community review process. At this time, Ms. Monpoint will present details for the selection and adoption processes for secondary courses.
Thank you, Mrs. Ford. Good evening, Dr. Herron, Mr. Chair, and members of the board. I will now provide details for the secondary courses addressed in the proposed work plan, beginning with American Sign Language courses 1 through 4. Upon the board's approval of the proposed work plan, the work of the review committee and communication to inform staff, parents, guardians, and community members of the selection and adoption process will begin in late October. Our goal will be to conclude this review phase prior to winter break. In an effort to ease the burden of committee representatives, some who will be serving on multiple committees, we've attempted to build a timeline that lessens the impact to their schedules. You'll see a different timeline for our science textbook review a bit further into the presentation, but the proposal is to run American Sign Language and math committees concurrently. The work of the review committee, let me move forward. I apologize. The work of the review committee and the evaluation rubrics will be organized according to 9 primary components. Within each component, materials under consideration will be evaluated according to specific criteria. The American Sign Language Review Committee will be composed of division and school-level staff to include a school board member, the secondary C&I director, the World Languages coordinator, an instructional technology team member, 1 high school administrator, an American Sign Language teacher, at least 2 special populations teachers, and parents and guardians. I will now provide an overview of the Algebra 2 and Algebra 2 trigonometry work plan. The work of the Math Review Committee and the evaluation rubrics will be organized according to the 9 primary components shared in American Sign Language and science. Within consideration will be evaluated according to specific criteria. The Algebra 2 and Algebra 2 Trigonometry Committee will be composed of division and school-level staff to include a school board member, the secondary C&I director, secondary mathematics coordinator, the secondary mathematics coach, an instructional technology team member, 1 high school administrator, at least 3 teachers of the content, at least 3 special populations teachers, and parents and guardians. I will now provide an overview of the science work plan, which includes chemistry, physics, anatomy and physiology, environmental science, AP chemistry, and AP physics. Upon the board's approval of the proposed work plan, the work of the review committee, and communication to inform staff, parents, guardians, and community members of the selection and adoption process will begin in February 2024. Because the scope of this work requires a large committee, many of whom will be participants in the American Sign Language and Mathematics review, the goal is to conclude final reviews of the earlier committees prior to commencing the science work. Just as for American Sign Language, the work of the review committee and the evaluation rubrics will be organized according to the 9 primary components. Within each component, materials under consideration will be evaluated according to specific criteria. The scope of the science curriculum selection and adoption process requires a large committee representative of 6 content areas. To support a comprehensive review of grade-level materials, the members of the review committee will work in 6 subgroups. The review committee will make a final selection and adoption recommendation informed by subgroup input and feedback collected through the staff and community review process. At this time, Mrs. Ford and I are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Hummel, and then Ms. Ortega.
So my question has to do with, it looks like that for the science textbooks, the digital resources all expired in August of 2023, I guess, except for AP Physics and Anatomy, which is going to expire the end of 2024. Is that correct? What are the teachers doing when there's no digital resources?
Yes. So we do not have access to the digital resources, but we still have the print materials in hand. So it's just the digital resources that have expired in August. So they still have our textbooks.
But from a practical standpoint, is this, are those classes being taught a little differently this year than last year? Because last year they had the digital resources?
Not in my communication with our science coordinator. It's not my understanding that they're being taught any differently this year. Typically, those resources, they do work hand in hand, but a lot of the digital resources actually mirror those printed materials.
Okay, and then my second question has to do with, I guess it doesn't, the timing. So you have the timing, is that you're having these science textbooks at the second part of
Yes.
the approval process? Does that, I read it and I go, oh, wow, I'd like those textbooks to, because there's no digital resources, to maybe come earlier, but I guess, does that really not play into the way it works with the budget? I'm just wondering if you have one group of textbooks that the textbook committee will make their final decisions by the end of the, December, whereas maybe those textbooks, I don't even know if budget-wise that's even possible, would be in the hands of our students sooner rather than later, depending on the expiration of the digital content. That's all.
I think when we looked at the scope of the work this year, we did look at the priorities. Right now, I believe the priorities will probably be looking at the K through 5 literacy curriculum, only because that's state mandated. And so when we're looking at the scope of work for science, we put it in the second semester because we really wanted to make sure that we had sufficient time allotted because it's 6 subgroups. And so we know that's going to take quite a bit of time, and we didn't want it to mirror the schedule for American Sign Language and math and literacy at the same time.
Right, and we haven't traditionally implemented new curriculum materials in the middle of the year, just because we also want to support their effective use by making sure that the teachers who are receiving those materials have any training that they need to implement those materials, and we have time to collect old materials. And
Okay, so it doesn't matter with regard to the digital resource piece, whether it's the first or the second. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Ortega?
Yeah, will all members of the review committee be essentially evaluating the same criteria? Forgive me if you said this. like filling out the same rubric regardless of subject matter expertise. Like when I was on a science committee, AP something science last time, I'm not going to be able to evaluate at the same level as a someone who teaches that, or a curriculum coordinator, but I might have a valuable perspective that a teacher might not have. So will that be taken into consideration?
So what we've done the past 2 textbook selection process cycles has been to develop our foundation rubric, which is the rubric that is available to all staff members, our community, parents, and guardian. And then we use that rubric as the basis to add more specific content detail that particularly our teachers who are experts in that content area would feel comfortable responding to. But with both rubrics, we don't ask individuals who don't feel comfortable making an informed judgment to respond. We would prefer that they just omit their response. So we do have those 2 different forms of the same rubric. They're looking at basically the same criteria, just the review committee's rubric is typically a little more detailed in nature so that our content area experts have the opportunity to really evaluate the alignment to standards, for example.
Thank you.
All right, Ms.
I have
Huntley.
one question. So you'll need 4 school board members if I look correctly. Can one person do 2, or would you prefer to have 4 different school board members?
Speaking from the K-5 committee requirements, that's going to be a pretty rigorous process because we are going to be looking at a number of materials and we're going to be looking at 6th grade levels. So I'm not saying that someone couldn't serve on more than one committee, but I just think thinking about the amount of time that it's going to require, perhaps American Sign Language or math, because there are fewer grade levels or courses represented. Someone could serve on multiple.
Regarding world languages and the cost estimates, for math, it explains it a little differently. The class sets, it says class sets per high school, but for world languages, it just says class sets. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yes. So for world languages, we have class sets of 35. And so right now, we have projected numbers of 180 for levels 1 through 4. And we only have American Sign Language in, I believe it's 1 building. So there'd be 35, a class set would equal 35.
Okay, all right. And is there an intention to expand that to other buildings? Would
As
that
of right,
affect? Go ahead.
so right now, I honestly don't know that answer, but I can get back with you.
I was kind of leaning in this direction.
Yeah, I think it depends on staffing.
Yeah.
Availability of staff who can teach it.
Yep, okay. All right, any other questions for Ms. Mompoint?
Yes.
Is it Dr. Mompoint?
No.
Ms. Mompoint? Ford? Dr. Ford?
No.
Okay.
No pressure.
I just don't mean to offend. You know? All right. Well, thank you both
Thank
for
you.
your work, and I know our board and future boards are going to be interested in serving on these committees, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
you.
the opportunity. All right. We went long in our closed session, and I do want to apologize to all those that stand by. Mr. Landers, I might be getting into your space here for a second. I'm going to ask those that are joining us to present on some of our discussion items, the preschool and the design progress on Jamestown Lafayette High Schools. We're going to pull them up 6-1 through 6-3, pause at 5-3, and then continue after we engage with those guests, so we can hear them and allow them to enjoy the rest of their days. So we're going to move on to 6-1.
Don't we need to
Go ahead.
amend the agenda?
We're keeping the agenda. It's chair's prerogative to adjust the order. That's all. The agenda's as is. Yep. So we don't have to amend the agenda. You have a different opinion on that?
She's a parliamentarian.
I know. I'm pausing to hear.
No,
We've done this in the past without amending the agenda.
okay. I mean, it wouldn't be difficult to,
Doesn't hurt.
it wouldn't hurt to do it, and it would take 2 seconds.
Yep. just keep in mind it's unnecessary. We've done this in the past, but we can amend the agenda if that would appease everybody and keep this moving. You have a motion, Ms. Hummel?
I move that we amend the agenda to move up, is it 6.01, 6.02, 6.03, and 6.0?
No, just 6.3.
6.03, okay. To follow 5.02.
So, and this is why it doesn't work, because we're not creating these as agenda items. These are just discussion items. So it doesn't need to change. The agenda doesn't change.
Okay.
What do you have, Ms. Ortega?
Can I make a motion?
You can.
I move to delay discussion of proposed agenda items 5.04 and 5.05 to follow agenda item 6, information and discussion items.
Okay. There's your motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Ms. Aller?
I think we may want to add 5.03 to that as well.
I missed it. I thought she said 503. Did she not?
Did you say all three? Oh, sorry.
5.3 to 5.5?
Sure.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, I said to take,
Are you taking notes, Ms. Aller? Yep. Ms. Aller, can you read it back?
I just had, the motion was to move to delay the discussion of 5.02, 5.03, 5.04, and 5.05. And then can you please repeat the motion?
Yes,
Mrs. Ortega?
I move to delay the discussion of proposed agenda items 5.03, 5.04, and 5.05 to follow agenda items 6, information and discussion items, all of them.
Second.
Without further discussion, Ms. Aller?
Aye.
Sorry, let me repeat that. Mrs. Ortega. Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner. Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're moving on to 6.1, Preschool Centers Design Update. Dr. Heron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Keeper is going to introduce our guests this evening to bring us some exciting design elements of our pre-K spaces. Mr. Keeper.
Thank you, Dr. Heron. Members of the board, we are delighted to be with you this evening and provide an update on preschool center design work. You'll recall that on May 2nd, the board approved a contract for architectural design services for the two preschool centers to Blue, Justice Upton, and PBK. This evening, Melissa Turnbull will lead us off in terms of a presentation, providing the board with an update. You have this presentation as well in board docs, and we're excited for you to hear this information. Melissa, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. So thank you, board chair, members of the board, Dr. Heron, and the entire team. I'm here. I'm Melissa Turnbull. I'm a partner at PBK, and I'm also here with Bailey Kempinen, as well as our Blue Justice Upton team. We are so excited to share with you a little bit about the great work that we have been collaborating with your team on. So with that, Bailey, if you don't mind sharing.
So I'm unable to share right now. Is there a way that I can share my screen?
Okay. Do we have share privileges?
You should momentarily.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Try again, Bailey.
Perfect.
Thank you. Perfect.
There we go.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so what we're going to tell you, if you don't mind going to the next slide, Bailey.
Yeah.
What we're going to tell you a little bit about is the work that we have been doing. So what we're showing you tonight is what we consider kind of schematic design presentation. So this, you'll see some conceptual floor plans, site plans, renderings, but there has been a lot of legwork that has happened before this, not only kind of introduction to the team and kind of kicking off some programming. We had a really collaborative design charrette. We'll share some imagery from that. We've done some kind of exploration since then and refinement, and there's still much to be done, but we're excited to kind of share with you a little bit about the schematic design. If you go to the next one. So when we say schematic design, this is kind of what it looks like in graphic form. So you'll see on the left, when we start this process, it is analyzing the site and looking at a lot of numbers for the building program so that we're setting a foundation of what the building is to be in form, but also being good stewards with your resources. Then we met together to conceptualize. This is our fun ideation time where we get to move parts and pieces of the program, start to understand architectural character that everybody likes or steers away from. And then again, what you're going to see tonight is some site plans, floor plan, as well as some imagery. Next. Perfect. So let me tell you a little bit about the collaborative design shred. So we capitalized on the great work and kind of feasibility study that had already been done and started, and we capitalized on that and took it a step further. We met for 2 days. The first day, we started with kind of a presentation, a little bit about what do we see as trends in early childhood education, what does the research show, so we are making sure we're applying best practices. We got together and created some kind of a word cloud of some of the guiding principles that we wanted as kind of a checks and balance for this project of what we want to see when the building is complete, if we've been kind of our metric for success. And then everyone kind of stood up and we got everyone's voice and input, and we got together and we started actually kind of playing architect and starting to move these parts and pieces on the site plan and understanding the importance of adjacencies and green space, what programs needed to be close together. So it was really fun. It was good team building and collaboration. And with that, out of day 2, we started to kind of look at, okay, what were some of the strengths and opportunities of those exercises? Which site plans seemed to be more successful, adjacencies, and then we even started looking at imagery based on the great feedback that we had from day 1. So again, what we're showing you tonight, we have obviously our team has been working hard on, but it is truly a collaborative effort, and thanks to the great feedback from your team. And in the charrette, I should say, we had administrators, we had representatives from every one of the campuses. We had different members of the kind of administration team. And so it was truly a kind of really diverse group of thought leaders in this. And so I would say it was very productive. With that, this is the guiding principle that we came up with as a group based on the words that we heard from the team. And so this is, again, is what we use as our metric for success of what, and our kind of inspiration of what we want these facilities to be. So it's to create a developmentally appropriate, innovative, and inclusive campus for preschoolers in Williamsburg, James City County that provides students with safe and sensory-rich interior and exterior environments that include natural light and are accessible to all. And so as you see the floor plan, as you see the imagery, you'll hopefully see a lot of these kind of words and a common thread that have kind of woven their way into our design. And so with that, if we go to this is our proposed floor plan. You know, one of the things that was so exciting that came out of the charrette is there were 2 groups and originally 2 different floor plans, and there was almost instantly consensus built around this plan, and obviously an iteration of this. And so it was really nice to see the kind of unification on that. So if you look at the composite plan, it is made up, there's in the central space, there's administration, multi-purpose rooms that, and OT, PT, rooms that serve the entire campus. Again, importance of scale and making sure kids don't have to walk too far. And so that having that administrative and multi-purpose space at the heart of the campus, we thought was a really great idea. You'll notice then that there are kind of 4 classroom pods or classroom wings. And each one of those is similar. And Bailey, I don't know if, and I guess one thing to point out, we'll have a warming kitchen off to the side. So again, thinking about all the different logistics of this campus will be served from the main campuses. And so having a warming and kind of prep kitchen was important as a part of the program. And so as we look at each one of these kind of classroom blocks and pods, there are 4 classrooms that have direct access from the corridors, but also have direct access outside for safe and secure outdoor play areas. So These one again, the connection with nature, inclusivity, natural light. This allowed every classroom to have that direct connection and access for impromptu or scheduled playtime. Each pod and classroom has their own storage space. That was one of the things we heard, is the importance of storage for all of the different manipulatives, as well as their own restrooms, so that students aren't having to walk too far for the restrooms. Also, pod storage, staff restrooms, and support space. So all of it in a very small space. So again, for the age of the student, that is really developmentally and age appropriate. And then the next one just shows a blow up of kind of the administrative space. It was really important that we design this to have a lot of the different services and programs, but also spaces that house them appropriately for, occupational and physical therapy, not only offices, but space to actually work. The administration space has a teacher workroom, a central space for a clinic, space for people to come, but also intentional and well allocated designed room for growth. So if you have volunteers or people that kind of push in and pull out, that they have space to go. And then the large multi-purpose room that can serve the campus for rainy days where kids need to have gross motor skills and development, get the wiggles out, but also just gathering space on the campus. So the importance of flexibility is key, and we are really excited. We think this plan does it well. And I think with that, I'm going to kick it off to Bailey, and she's going to tell you a little bit about how we're taking this consensus-built floor plan and allocate it on the sites.
Yeah, so as Melissa said, we have 2 elementary school sites, Claribird Baker and Norge. We'll start with Claribird Baker, as we call it CBB internally, to shorten it, and just figure out where those go on the site. So for CBB, we've located the building in the parcel of land that you guys just completed the purchase of. And then we can zoom in a little bit on this plan, and we start to see a parent drop-off and a bus drop-off. So separating those 2 loops for safety and efficiency for drop-off moments. We have enough stacking on each one to fit all the parents and all the buses. The buses will enter through the main corridor, and the parents will drop off at the main administration space. Moving on to Norge, this one ended up in the back of the site. It's protected, it's isolated away from not isolated, but it's separated from the elementary school. If we zoom in a little bit, same concept applies. There's a bus loop, a parent loop. So separating those 2 traffic zones for drop-offs. And then each smaller courtyard that Melissa just showed us in the floor plan, you can kind of see how they're located on the site. They look out to green space here. And again, student drop off at the main entry and then down that central corridor. In these courtyards, we wanted to sort of take a deep dive into what those are and how they align with our guiding principle, how they can be inclusive and innovative, but also scale appropriate. So as we started putting all these building blocks together, we actually developed some imagery for what this building could be. We initially started off with 2 options, but the consensus of the group and the charrette was that this was the option. We loved this scheme. It's residential in scale, so it isn't going to feel overwhelming for our pre-K students. And then the materiality of it as well, it feels like it belongs in Virginia. If we zoom in on the main entry, everything is small scale residential material, so it's not overwhelming and not overstimulating for our small students that are going to be going to this campus every day. And a quick look at the interiors as well. We are creating different scales and different play environments for all students. Everything is going to be accessible, and then there's also smaller spaces carved out. If someone is overwhelmed, they can hop in a little reading nook and calm down. So it's a variety of scales for all students that are all developmentally appropriate. And then just taking a quick look at that courtyard playground area, what it could be. We themed this one after pine trees and sort of decided that each courtyard might have a native species theme that speaks to its sense of place. And then again, just maintaining accessibility for all students and creating smaller zones that are scale appropriate and providing the natural light into the interior of the building, which is again based off one of our guiding principles.
Okay, thanks, Bailey. And so I guess with that, that is kind of what we have been up to. The next time we have the privilege of seeing you will be for our design development presentation. So it will be what you've seen here and just even further refined. We will have a lot of programming meetings with the staff to talk about the nuances of each of those classrooms and what are the kit of parts that we need to be sure go in. We'll start making material decisions. So there's still much ahead of us, but we're really excited of where we stand. And just so you know, kind of an overall timeline, we again, we'll see you in November for the design development presentation. And then we will get hard at work at construction documents. So this is the details of how to put this building together as well as the specifications. And then with our hopeful notice to proceed with a contractor and in budget in April of 2024 with construction beginning soon thereafter. So it will be here before we know it, but with the anticipated opening in fall of 25. So with that, if there are any questions, and thank you again from our team, our Blue Justice Appleton and PBK team.
It's very exciting, Ms. Turnbaugh. Thank you for the presentation. Any questions or comments, Ms. Hunley?
Yes, I'm excited about the nature parts. Is that in addition to our traditional playgrounds, or are you all thinking about going to more with like the pine cone thing, or is there going to be also a playground?
That's a good question. You know, we haven't made any final decisions, I would say, on that. I think the heart that we heard from everyone is having lots of variety of space for students to have the opportunity to go out inside and play. We want to obviously not replicate cost in every courtyard, but also make sure each courtyard is inviting enough. So it might be that we have distributed playground equipment in each courtyard, but that have different kit of parts so that give kids different opportunities, but also different experiences. So they might get to go to their own and then also go down the hall to a different one for different, sensory or stimulation. So, that is a part of our next kind of chapter in design development is really refining those. But we're excited about having that opportunity for those kiddos.
Okay, and two more quick questions. The warming station, they eat in the classrooms then, right? There's no cafeteria, so they'll take the food to the classroom. Okay, and then,
correct.
and what is the SCCR, the yellow building blocks that were on the side? What does that stand for?
Self-contained classroom.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Yes.
Right, thank you. Any other questions, Ms. Hummel?
What is the breakaway? What does that mean? In one of the,
Go back to the plan.
it was like the very first. I just was curious.
Yes, on the floor plan.
Yeah.
Yes, so we got a request from the school system to just have smaller, like breakaway spaces to either bring a student out or the teachers could have a small conference there. It's essentially just a small flex space.
Okay, and then
We've talked about flexibility again, whether that be for kind of cool down space or, sensory space. It could serve as a small office of kind of carving out very, strategic places for either instructional pullout or offices someday if need be, but kind of design flexibility within the building. That's a good question.
And then my second question was about the space at CBB. Is that this is really not, I guess, for you, but is that a new, they said they just bought property? I didn't know about it.
Yes, the county actually purchased that additional piece of land that became available, and then we were able to use it as a placement for the new building.
Okay, yeah, no, that was news.
They just cleaned out a bunch of older buildings there.
Oh, okay.
It's right by my house. So.
Any other questions for Ms. Turnbull? Well, thank you so much for the presentation. Really looking forward to seeing the design development, those next steps as they come to fruition. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I know the ladies
Okay, we'll move on to discussion item 6.2, a progress update on value engineering for Jamestown High School cafeteria expansion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Snipes is going to introduce our guest this evening to give us an update on Lafayette first. Jamestown Cafeteria first.
Good evening, School Board Chair, School Board members, and Dr. Herron. Tonight's agenda item supports Goal 4 of the strategic plan, and the information provided to you tonight will update you on the design and progress and the value engineering of the Jamestown cafeteria expansion. If you recall, in June of 2022, the board awarded architectural services of Jamestown High School expansion to Hudson and Associates. And in June of 2023, WJCC contracted with MVP to perform value engineering services for Jamestown cafeteria expansion. Value engineering ensures that each new construction project engages in a process to identify efficiencies and potential cost savings. A formal value engineering workshop was conducted for the Jamestown High School cafeteria expansion. The workshop identified approximately 76 value improvements ideas during the creative phase of the study. And after these ideas were evaluated and based on subjective criteria for project improvement, 26 of those were determined to enhance the value. Mr. Richard Corner, a representative from Hudson and Associates, is present this evening to present an update of the value engineering recommendations. Mr. Corner?
Thank you, Marcellus. I'm a little more comfortable standing, if you don't mind. And I welcome any questions or comments during the session. We participated in the VE process with some preparation for the VE team, and then we met with the VE team on I believe it was the Friday afternoon that they had wrapped up their work, and when they finalized their report, they issued these, it was 26 ideas to us, and then we went through that very carefully and wrote our responses. And many of these ideas were things that we were considering. Many of these things were things that we liked, but in some cases, we saw it as either cost neutral or possibly even adding cost. Once we started considering, well, what would it take to implement some of these things? And I believe you all have this spreadsheet in front of you. Should we just run through these item by item?
Yes.
One thing, the first thing they wanted to know was, what could we use storefront in lieu of curtain wall? Storefront is a less substantial but less expensive window system. Virtually all the windows out at Jamestown High School, including those at the existing cafeteria, are made out of the more expensive curtain wall framing system. It's very robust and very, and was the window system of choice. And we've got two very large windows. We want to continue to use that. It's appropriate structurally. We do have some smaller windows that are not quite as tall that we are going to use the less expensive but structurally adequate storefront system. So this was more or less, there were no savings. This was something we were already planning to do. A1.1, reduce the amount of curtain wall on east and west. We looked at it and we eventually dismissed the idea because we didn't like the amount of wall system it was putting back. And we challenged whether we'd actually be saving $28,000 or not, because we'd have to build something back in its place.
Can you explain what a curtain wall is, please?
Yes, ma'am. It's a large. You've seen these like these mullions that form the window frame.
Right.
A standard storefront window mullion is 4.5 inches deep by about 2 1/4 inches wide. The storefront system is about 7 inches deep and 2 3/4 inches wide. So it's a bigger, more robust. But that allows it to span greater distance vertically because it's a deeper structural section.
Okay.
But because of that, it costs a little bit more. The glass, the glass all costs the same. It's the aluminum tubing that they were after.
So what you're saying here is you do want to continue to use the curtain wall? Or no?
Yes, for two of the largest windows.
For two of the largest windows,
But
okay.
the smaller windows we're gonna, in the courtyard, we're gonna use storefront. So this was more or less something we were, to some extent, we were already doing.
Richard, and just considering time, do we just want to do the yes ones, or would the board is also interested in the no? Or are you interested in all? I just thought about that.
I'll defer to you, Mr. Snipes.
I would recommend we look at the yes ones
Okay.
unless you have a question about no's. At least you know what we have considered. If you want to go through the entire list, that's possible as well.
So as we're hitting the yeses, if you see a no you have a question about, please raise that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Snipes.
I'm gonna skip to, 1.2, because I'm not sure it's clear what we're going to do there. In lieu of full height windows, begin windows at 2 feet 6 inches above the finished floor. This is where we have the windows, that structural tube going all the way down and anchoring at the floor to the beam above, and it gives us good structural integrity. The VE team recommended coming up 2 feet 6 inches off the floor with a low wall. We are not going to do that idea. The reason is because that low wall has to be a very structurally sound wall in order to take the wind load off the aluminum window wall, the curtain wall system. So we didn't see any cost savings there at all.
So are you going to use full windows during the, full-size windows?
Full height windows.
Okay, thank you.
And again, that matches the type of windows in the cafeteria today
Right.
that they have. Add frit or solar film on trapezoidal windows to reduce heat gain and glare. Yes, we're going to specify a certain kind of glass that reduces the solar heat gain, particularly on that west side.
So, Mr. Snipes, do you have pictures to show the differences with the recommended engineering changes compared to what was the original schematic?
We have some when we originally went through the VE, and we can provide those to you for any of these that you like.
Well, I mean, maybe I'm the only one that's interested, but after James Blair, I'm critical.
I understand.
So, okay.
All right, so that was A14.
Yes. So, Marcellus, we said we're going to concentrate on the yes?
Yes.
I'm going to skip to A4.0 then. Let's talk about that. It says possibly. Eliminate one bay or design westernmost as a bid option. There were some significant savings there, but that involved reducing the square footage of the project. So naturally, there's going to be a good savings there. The problem is you also give up some of the seating and size of the space. We deferred to staff to help resolve that, and it's my understanding, Marcellus, the school was very reluctant
They'll give up.
to see the project made any smaller.
Correct.
I think we're right around 6,500 square feet, and the project initially envisioned up to 7,000 square feet. So they really didn't want to make it any smaller. As it is, we're also adding some bathrooms that were requested, and they're encroaching on some of the seating capacity of the existing cafeteria. So there was some pushback on a 4.0. So that has essentially become a no. We're not going to implement that. Let's get to A 7.0. Utilize insulated metal panels. We're considering that. We're in discussion with staff on that. The metal panels actually added cost, but there was some pushback there because of the added cost. The advantage over the metal panels is they're a little more durable and robust than the exterior insulation finish system that we're proposing to use.
And
So-
is that what EIF is, installation finish system?
Exterior insulation finish
Finish
system.
system, okay.
They actually have that all over it's on the upper portions of the gymnasium, all around, and so we were going to match that. We thought that was appropriate. It's a material that requires more maintenance, though, than the panels. We just thought the $80,000, the extra money for the panels, we just didn't think that was prudent at this point, to go there. I'll skip to, let me skip to, let's see, we'll talk about S 2.0. Use fiber mesh in lieu of welded wire fabric in the floor slabs. Again, a small savings. We're going to defer to our structural engineer. What we're most concerned about in this particular project, it's a large area of floor, contiguous floor. It's not like it's cut up into smaller rooms. So any type of shrinkage control, or you know, if we get any cracking in that large area of floor slab, it's going to telegraph through the floor finish, which is I think it's an LV, a luxury vinyl tile in that space, which by the way is a very nice feel and acoustically appropriate floor finish in there. But we're very concerned about crack control. We're more concerned about crack control than saving $2,000, because what we don't want is that floor slab breaking up. Let's see, we talked, I skipped over 8.0. I should talk about that. Eliminate eaves at high roof locations. This was simply a design suggestion to prevent a conflict between the overhanging eaves and some rooftop mechanical equipment. This is something we were already planning to do and didn't really involve any money. I'll talk about M 2.0, provide air distribution above east and west window walls. Our engineers are doing this now. These are these large windows on the ends of the cafeteria addition, so we'll get some airflow at the windows, which will help reduce drafts inside the space. Provide standard 90-degree elbows, M 2.1. Yes, we're going to do that. I'll talk briefly about the M 3.0. It was a no. This involved some really interesting design ideas by the VE team, and would create these flexible fabric ducts and create the possibility for exposed ceilings and do some really interesting things. We don't like to do this in a public school environment. It's not as clean. It results in the opportunity for a lot of dirt and dust to accumulate on all those exposed joists, particularly where we have, they proposed a gypsum board cover over the entire ceiling, way more expensive than the spray fireproofing. We just felt like it was going to turn into a cost boondoggle to do it. Neat idea. Let's see. The rest of these. I'll talk a little bit about E 3.0 and E 4.0. I'll talk about those together, how we're serving the addition electrically. The VE team suggested that we just take all our electrical circuits and run them all back to other existing panels in the school. The problem with that is we don't know where they all are. They're all remote. We know that on the other side of the cafeteria and kitchen. We also know that some of those panels are already at maximum capacity. Our solution is to go back to the main distribution panel, which happens to be relatively new in this school. And we're going to provide feeders that run over the existing cafeteria to two new electrical panels right there at the addition. Most of the electrical work, therefore, is going to be right there inside the addition with minimal impact on the existing school. It was really, you could see there were only a couple $1,000s, a few $1,000s of money involved here, but what the VE team, in our opinion, was overlooking was the impact of taking all our power for lighting and domestic and for HVAC and running it all across the cafeteria ceiling. There was going to be a good bit more impact because all of that has to go inside metal conduit. We're trying to minimize our intrusion into the existing cafeteria and do as much work out in the addition that we can do. I'll skip on to the last page, E16.0. They wanted us to add the SCCR to the RTU schedule. The SCCR, I can't recall the exact acronym, but it's a coordination study that is done for electrical safety to make sure that the loads that we're creating trip the breakers at the right settings. And they wanted to make sure that these trip settings are, for the mechanical equipment, are added to the mechanical schedule. That will help the electrician with the breaker settings. So it was a great suggestion. We're going to be doing that. The last thing, E17.0, utilize tamper-proof outlets for all of the 15 amp and 20. These are all the routine receptacles, for example, the ones you see in the room here. By the way, these to provide tamper-proof outlets, you know, that's actually a building code requirement in elementary schools. Now, in the next iteration of the building code, when they adopt the 2021 building code, it will be a requirement in high schools, in all schools. So we're going to go ahead and voluntarily do that today because we thought it was a good suggestion. So
Thank you,
we
sir.
can run back and go over any of the no's or anything else if you want.
Ms.
So
Young?
can you just explain what the difference is between a tamper-proof outlet and a regular outlet like these in here?
Yes, ma'am. You might have, I don't know if you all had these when we had small children and we had these little, the cover plate actually has some things that block the prong. You can't.
Right,
You can't,
I know.
you have to either slide something over and then put the prongs in, or you have to line it up and you have to kind of twist the prongs,
Right.
really push hard. Kind of a nuisance. Keeps little kids from doing stupid things that I did when I was a kid. I had a little erector set and I got the little wires out and I said, well, I wonder what happens if I put one wire on one side, one on the other, and I touched them. And, you know,
Yeah.
I was that kid.
Me too.
So it keeps you from.
Blew the circuit in my house, I understand.
I don't know. I don't know why it's particularly urgent. I have not heard of any incidents of children getting hurt, in a public, like in a school environment, through the electrical system. But again, electrical safety is not to be, trifled with.
Right. Thank you.
That's right. Yep. Any other questions? Thank you for the very detailed and technical presentation, but it all just it bodes well for me to know that all these things are being addressed and that there's been a team that's evaluated these recommendations and to see the value in some and not others. So thank you for your work.
Mr.
I'll be
Snipes,
candid,
I was a little reluctant. Marcellus knows, we were pushing back a little bit. This is a fairly small project to try to tackle VE on, but it was useful, and they had a good team. I even knew some. It was interesting. I got to meet some of the guys on the team I hadn't seen in years, and they took it all very. We all took it very seriously, and I think they came up with some good ideas and some good patterns. So.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Well, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
What are next steps, Mr. Snipes?
The next steps for us are to take those recommendations, prepare them to put it into the design, and then to come back to you probably at the 90% and provide you with the final update on the cafeteria, where the restrooms are going to be, how they're going to be designed, all the any additions that we're looking to make with these recommendations.
Good. Great. All right, thank you.
All right.
Okay. We'll move on to item 6.3, progress update, value engineering for the Lafayette High School Annex. All right. Mr. Snipe is back.
Similar to the last agenda item, this supports Go Forward, the strategic plan. It is a design progress update for the value engineering of the Lafayette High School Building 900 renovation. Same process was involved in June of 2022. We hired the architects from Mosley Architects to help us design it, and in June of 2023, the MVP performed the value engineering for the Lafayette High School renovation. There were about 48 improvement ideas that were brought forward by the value engineering committee. The value engineering for MVP. 17 of those were determined to enhance the value of the project. And Miss Emily Baker from Mosley Architects is here tonight to provide those recommendations.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for your time this evening. Quick question. Do I have a clicker that I could click back and forth just because I might share a couple images related to the list that MVP provides? So first off, I'll just pull up the location just to remind everyone about this project at Lafayette High School. It's what they call the Building 900 Annex Building next to the tennis courts. It's about 15,000 square foot that we're planning to do a heavy renovation as well as some exterior improvements. I had the pleasure of presenting to you all in June on more of the detail of the design during design development. We walked through what the goals of the project was and how we were planning to accomplish those goals. So I want to touch just briefly on those goals before jumping straight into the list from MVP, just to remind you all of kind of the project scope. So there were 4 primary goals, if you will, that were developed during programming. We really wanted to enhance security on the site. We really wanted to, it was determined that we wanted to maximize underutilized space. We wanted to look at opportunities for increased flexibility of use of space, and then also just really bringing the MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems up to date, the interior finishes up to date. This building really hasn't been touched very much since it was originally built in the 1970s, so it needs some major upgrades. So we went through this in June. I won't go through a deep dive of the design, but on the left hand is the existing layout, the right hand is the proposed layout. We're accomplishing a lot of security measures in various ways. We're maximizing underutilized space. There was a daycare center that's no longer operational. There's a cardio kind of athletic center up in that upper right-hand corner that is underutilized. And then there are 2 existing non-traditional programs, the GED program and the Learning Lab, already existing in the space. And then a 3rd non-traditional program, the Reset program, will be added to this building starting in, I believe, 2025. And so we needed to take all of that into account while still considering the fact that down the road this building might be used by the high school fully again. So just creating that flexibility. Very limited scope is being done to the exterior. We're not increasing the size of the building. We're adding some new punched openings for more natural light, and we're replacing all the exterior doors, and we're replacing a few rooftop mechanical units. That's really the extent of the exterior building scope. And so moving into this slightly daunting looking list, which I'll try to make as entertaining and exciting as possible, but it was a really successful collaborative experience with MVP, the third-party consultant. It was over a 3-day period. Myself, our engineering team, the owner representatives were able to join and talk about the goals of the projects, just like I spoke with you all about in June. And wanting to preserve the intent of the project while still looking for cost savings opportunities. So these, I don't know how many there are, they're 2 pages worth here, are the ideas that they narrowed down to be potential candidates. And so what myself and my team did was to review those thoroughly and essentially just give our recommendation in that far right-hand column, as well as a justification. We've provided that to the owner's team for them to decide which ones to select to move forward with so that we can complete our design and get it out to bid. So just jumping through these line items, the A line items are the architectural line items. First off, the MVP team identified the fact that there's this concrete mezzanine existing over essentially, existing kind of over this core of the building right here. it's really not being used for much. In fact, I'm 5'0" and I have to duck when I climb up there. So it's not.
5'0".
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's not functional really in any capacity. Like you can use it for any per code, any reason. It has some various MEP equipment up there, and so they said, well, what if you just got rid of it? But that actually is an additional cost to get rid of it. And after speaking with my team, my structural engineer, we thought if it wasn't doing any harm to just leave it in place. It wasn't being used for anything and didn't need to be used for anything. And beyond the fact that maybe it would allow a higher ceiling in some of the offices, we didn't think that outweighed the extra cost to remove it. And then on top of that, the potential structural complications. So those are justification for A 1.0, A 2.0. There were 3 locations, moving back to the floor plan, use my pointer. There were 3 locations that it was very important to the owner that we have flexibility, and we have 3 operable partitions, one located here, here, and here, for flexibility of those spaces, the learning lab, the reset program, and then the generalized classrooms. So I feel like that's an obvious one to point out that yes, there could be cost savings if you go with regular walls rather than the operable partitions, but we felt that it wasn't in keeping with the goal of the project, so we recommended no. A 3.0, revise the interior walls from CMU to metal stud with gypsum. In speaking with the owner again, this would have lower durability. The goal of this project was to do a good renovation and kind of leave it and not have to touch it for a while. And unfortunately with schools and students, metal stud walls and gyps tend to not hold up as well over time. So our recommendation would be no. A 6.0 is this is a very small line item, but to utilize a standard carpet tile rather than a textile composite flooring that Mosley likes to recommend for offices. So this is really just affecting, it's really just affecting these rooms in red right here, like 1, 2, 3, 4 offices. So it's really limited amount of space. If you really want to save $1,100, you certainly can, but from a product standpoint, Mosley stands behind our recommendation to use the TCF product. And then finally for the architectural, a 7.0, this is just suggesting utilizing a different floor finish in the restrooms and the kitchenette rather than what we had proposed. Ultimately, Mosley would say whatever the maintenance facility staff feels more comfortable with, perhaps whatever they're used to cleaning, is what we would recommend they go with. So, yeah, we said yes to that as long as the facility staff was fine with those adjustments. The M series for mechanical, one of the suggestions was, I will not read this in its entirety because my mechanical engineer was very thorough in his response, which I appreciate, but the gist of it was MVP suggested that since the school is not in full operation year-round, say in the summer months when it's, we're reaching max heat, or in the winter we're missing some of those really, really cold days when school's out of session, they proposed for the mechanical engineer to use a different calculation in sizing the equipment. Ultimately, our engineer doesn't recommend that due to the fact that it really comes down to the comfort of the occupants, and my understanding is there are some programs that occur in the summertime during that school, or there could be in the future, and we would hate to size it inappropriately with guessing that it might not be used in the summer and then have people be very uncomfortable in the building during the summertime if it's too hot. M2.0 was a suggestion to utilize instantaneous water heaters, essentially these little mini point of use water heaters instead of one large water heater that we were proposing. our engineering team thinks that's a fine approach that's done often in renovations. So we recommend taking that VE recommendation.
So on that water heater discussion, there wasn't a concern about capacity and usage of water, large quantities of water, and being able to heat that in a short amount of time?
Yeah, that's a great question. MVP made sure to put an appropriate amount in, so they weren't saying one point of use water heater could serve 4 restrooms. It was paired appropriately to the amount that one restroom would typically need on a daily basis. Yeah. The last mechanical item is really, some of these are called design suggestions. I don't know if the gentleman before me had some similar things to say about this, but some of these design suggestions are items where MVP couldn't particularly put a number on it. It just was saying, they just said that it could have operational savings in the long run. So that's why there's not an actual cost number there. M3.0 is essentially saying that we should utilize some single zone VAV capacity functions, which inherently are already on the rooftop units that we're speccing. So they're just saying to make sure we utilize the technology that exists on those to have operational savings. So we definitely agree that we should do that. Moving on to the electrical suggestions, they just had noted that there were 2 disconnects being called for on our plans, so it's duplicated, so we're just deleting one. We don't need 2. They recommended installing MC cable in lieu of a conduit cable. That meets code and is perfectly fine, so we would recommend approving that suggestion. The E4.0, adding the SECR to the RTU schedule, that's not a cost implication. That's just something that we need to obtain from the utility company in order for the GC to have the best amount of information to select their mechanical products from. E5.0 recommends using tamper-proof type receptacles. Currently, the code states for educational facilities that elementary schools require tamper-proof, but middle school, high school, and secondary college universities do not. So that is an owner's preference, but you're not required to comply, so we recommended no unless the owner so chooses. For the E11.0, providing a electric trip main enclosed circuit breaker, we were planning to use the existing main panel because it is still serviceable and functional. This suggestion actually adds approximately $5,000 to the cost of the project, and after speaking with the electrical engineer, he did agree that it would be an improvement to the overall function, essentially, if we're putting all this money in to make this renovated building last and not have to go back and touch it for a while. Might as well update this one piece of the panel so that it doesn't need to be replaced 5-10 years down the road. So we said yes to that. And then finally, the 4 C items are all civil items. They're all kind of related to the same thing, and so they were essentially asking if we could if there's any way we could get some cost savings from this new paver system that we've designed out in this courtyard. Going back to the list, one of them I would absolutely not recommend, and that would be C 4.0. They're saying perhaps we don't need a concrete pavement under the pavers. If you drive over that paver without a concrete base with, say, a riding lawnmower, it's going to sink and have the gravel base settle, and we just wouldn't recommend that. The other 3 are more aesthetic things. One, they recommended using this C4.2, this red brick stamped look concrete. We don't feel that's very fitting. It's not anywhere else in the school. It kind of tends to come off looking kind of fake, so we wouldn't recommend that. The one that we would recommend taking out of the civil suggestions is that in lieu of concrete pavers, we go with a what our civil engineer calls a integral colored concrete. So essentially that'll give us a different, it'll still be a concrete path, but it'll be a different color, and it'll have a different texture to kind of delineate based on the approved design. It'll delineate this meandering path that we are going for from a design standpoint here. And I think that is, so we went through all the items, just timeline. Once we receive the items that have been approved from the school, we will go ahead and finalize the documents. We're looking to advertise to bid in October, get bids back in November, trying to award contract to the GC in December, and then the GC will begin construction June of 2024 and wrap up in December of 2024 for the start of the spring semester. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Yes, Ms.
Yeah, the only question I have is about the tamper-proof light outlets. I mean, that's not much of a cost savings to not have those, and since that's from what the other gentleman said, those are going to be required in building code in from 2021 iteration. Why not just go ahead and do those?
That's certainly an owner preference, and the owner's been made aware of the fact that it is code compliant now, but the upcoming code, if you were to do this project in a couple years, they would require you to do it at a high school level. There will be some additional cost. It's just at the owner's discretion of whether they want to go ahead and be proactive with that.
I can tell you we're going to say yes to that. I would presume, I'm not speaking for Dr. Herring, but I think we're going to say yes to that one.
Okay.
Okay.
It's just, I think it would be wise to, so that we don't have to address it later.
Understood. Thanks.
Any other questions for Mosley Architects or feedback from Mr. Snipes, Dr. Herring, on this project? Again, thank you so much for the thorough report, and I know that it's in good hands. Looking forward to next steps. Thank you.
Thank you all, and hopefully it wasn't too boring with this specific.
Not at all.
Wanted to make sure you had all the information,
Very
so
concise.
thanks
Thank you.
again for your time.
Thank you so much. Okay. Move on to our last discussion item, information on our CIP, capital improvement projects.
Mr. Snipes, I believe you're on next. Thanks very much indeed. Yeah, Mr. Snipes is going to do a very quick flying by overview of our projects over the last year.
Yes, I am. So each year, the Capital Improvement Committee needs to review potential projects to include in the school division's overall budget. Subsequently, the superintendent and staff develop a recommended capital improvement for the school board review and adoption. And upon school board and funding approval, WJCC operations staff coordinates and oversees project completion. Just as an afterthought, you guys will be receiving such updates in the near future from a capital improvement committee. On the screen, you'll see the 2020 through 2023 projects that we have been producing and getting done. Historically, Ops would present these projects completed during the previous summer, affectionately referencing the movie, I Know What You Did Last Summer, but since this was been over 3 years, you don't know what you did the last 3 summers. So the Berkeley HVAC replacement phase 1 was done, the Berkeley baseball field refurbishment, Norge refurbishment, James River refurbishment, Stonehouse refurbishment. There's been a walk-in refrigerator added at Jamestown, as well as an additional generator. And typically during our division-wide projects for playground equipments and parking lots. And so you're going to see some of those things in the next couple of slides. At the Berkeley HVAC replacement was started last summer. It was awarded to Vertexco. We had a budget of about $4 million, and the bid amount came in at $4,188,000. Part of that $4 million was a grant, and Mrs. Ewing can talk more about that if you have questions, but we also received a grant to help fund part of that project. At the baseball field, we updated the baseball field, and we provided sprigging, new goalposts, seating, and a scoreboard. This ensures our students are on solid ground, no pun intended. At the Norge refurbishment, this was our largest refurbishment last summer. The replacement of the gym floor, vinyl tile, and carpet, along with refurbished restrooms, welcome the road runners to the 2022-2023 school year. Again, the budget was $1.3 million. The actual expenditure was $993,689. We had a very good bid on that. At James River, we refurbished the tiles in the corridors and the classrooms, and that went swimmingly. And as you can see, our custodians have the floor shining with that wet look for those returning dolphins. Again, the budget was $294,962, but after the pandemic, there was some lead time and some other projects. The actual expenditure went up to $438,644, with some of those funds being able to be used from projects such as the previous one that was 1.3 that came in under budget. We were able to use those funds to complete this project. In Stonehouse, we also refurbished the floor tiles in parts of those the school, and the Sea Stars were able to come back to shining floors and shining classrooms. As mentioned earlier, Jamestown, we added a walk-in refrigerator as part of our replacement cycle, and the Jamestown generator that supports emergency and critical functions during a power outage. The contractor was Crest for the walk-in fridge. The budget was $87,400, and the actual expenditure was $118,911, and that does include after architectural and engineering as well. The contractor for the generator was Warwick Mechanical. The budget was $57,368, and the actual expenditure was $31,010. Now that occurred because we did the replacement of the generator along with the replacement of the HVAC. So combining those projects helped that generator replacement come in really, really low. So some of the things that weren't in the CIP, but we thought we would inform you of since it's been over the last 3 years, is we have some grant-funded opportunities where we installed shade structures at our facilities. The only facility that we're remaining is James River, which we're starting this year. But we installed shade structures at all of our facilities, and those shade structures were prefabricated, high-quality engineered shade structures that protected students from nature's elements, and they were able to go outside and eat and have class. So it's a nice feature for our schools.
What's the lifespan on one of those?
I'll get that for you, but I'll get that for you.
Okay. Again,
one of the largest task that that really took a lot of efforts, and I would be remiss, and I need to go back to say this. There are two individuals I wanted to say that over the last 3 years really helped in these projects. One is Susan Gardner. She's now at Records, and she kept our CIP and kept us informed of balances. And the other one is Jim Falzone, our supervisor of facilities and capital projects. He was on this, and he was instrumental in not only getting these 9 trailers installed in one summer. It's a daunting task. He's also trying to get this trailer installed at Stonehouse now. So we have a total of 13 trailers in our school system at the present time. And then there were some pandemic projects, and that was when we were being funded, but the county and the city did find a way to provide us some money so we could do some things. We put up some security window film at our schools, which were really provided a great aesthetic, but also security for our schools. We replaced some steps at Matthew Whaley, which were in dire need. We also did some insulation of the foundation at Matthew Whaley, which is here. We waterproofed it. And of course, we changed the stage curtains at Matthew Whaley. And the biggest thing was the air filtration system that we installed air filters that you see here, plus filters in the ceiling, which are called MERV 11 filters. So there were some pandemic projects that were completed. This summer, as you can see, what we are currently working on is a lot. Again, I give credit to our operations staff. and Mr. Falzone for working diligently to help get these things in. Matthew Whaley carpet, the Clarabelle Baker restroom refurbishment at James River, we had a walk-in fridge. At Matthew Whaley, we had a walk-in fridge. We've done a refurbishment at Laurel Lane this summer. We're replacing gutters in the next couple of months. We've done a Toano Middle School restroom renovation, the second phase of the Berkeley HVAC. We're starting the process for replacing the track and the tennis courts at Lafayette. We started the War Hill High School refurbishment. We finished it, as a matter of fact. We started the auxiliary gym construction. As you just we were informed, we started the design process for Jamestown cafeteria expansion and the Lafayette renovation. We're designing pre-K space. Mr. Keever just brought that to your attention, as well as the division-wide playgrounds, parking lots, and fire panels. So that's all occurring this summer. There's a lot going on. So next year, I'll say you know what we did last summer, and it'll be talking about these projects. And just so you're aware, the FY24 CIP was approved, and that are projects that will start next summer. The Norge electrical system upgrades, refurbishment of carpet and painting at Matoka, Stonehouse HVAC design, Stonehouse generator, Stonehouse walk-in fridge, Berkeley lighting upgrades, Berkeley painting and refurbishment, the Jamestown construction, the Lafayette construction, pre-K space construction, as well as division projects. So there's a lot going on. We want to thank you for your support of operations. We want to thank the county and city for their continued funding of it. Our schools are some of the best looking that, and I go around to other schools, they are really well funded. So thank you guys.
Fantastic. This is wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Snipes. Thank you to all of the ops staff that you lead, and especially Susan and Jim, and their expeditious work to get those learning cottages up and running. All but one, I think, one remaining.
One remaining at
That's
Stonehouse.
fantastic. That's fantastic. Any questions for Mr. Snipes before we let him go?
Thank you for your visuals and puns.
Puns. All right. Thank you, Mr.
All right,
Snipes.
thanks.
Appreciate it. All right, we're going to head back to our proposed agenda items, returning to 5.3. We have a purchase request to review of cell amplifiers, associated equipment, and installation. Dr. Heron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Landers is coming up again to provide information on this item.
Thanks for pivoting for us, Mr. Landers.
No problem at all, sir.
Thank you.
So good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Heron. This agenda item is to ask for your consideration of and approval at the next meeting of purchasing cellular signal amplifiers, the associated equipment, and installation at 5 of our schools. A recent test and audit of signals was conducted within 5 of our schools that were either known or reported to have poor reception. The test confirmed these buildings as having extremely poor signal internally. The schools are Matthew Whaley, Lois Hornsby, Matoka, J.B. Blayton, and Norge. Amplifying the signals would provide staff with the ability to use cellular-based voice, text, and app-based communications. And in consideration of safety and security, it is recommended that the signal amplifiers be installed at these locations. The total cost for the 5 locations is $244,635.27, and it includes the necessary amplifiers, associated equipment, as well as installation services. The funds are in the fiscal year 22 safety and security line, and it would be purchased using the Fairfax County cooperative contract to CDWG. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Orgo looks like she has one.
Just a quick one. What does that mean, the Fairfax County cooperative contract?
It means that Fairfax County actually went through a full-blown RFP process to award a contract, but the contract has cooperative language in it so that any other public entity can use that contract to purchase against.
Okay, thank you.
Is that a time saver, essentially? Or-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it takes what would be a 6-month process to a couple of weeks.
And we use this process quite often in buying.
Any other questions for Mr. Landers? The 5 schools at the moment, are we looking at adding additional schools in subsequent years?
Right now, we don't have any reason to think we're going to need to anytime soon. However, with all due caution, I would never say never.
Understand. Yeah. Just curious. Great. Thank you, Mr. Landers.
You're welcome.
5.4, we're going to review a purchase request by Human Resources Information System and Implementation Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Landers is going to start off talking about process, and then I think Mr. Baker's going to talk a little bit about the systems. Or answer questions. Mr. Landers, want to take us through?
Absolutely. So this agenda item is to ask for your consideration of and approval at the next meeting of purchasing the PowerSchool Unified Talent HR Suite. The division currently utilizes several disparate systems within the Human Resources Department for various functions. Systems provided by different vendors are used to track substitutes and professional staff absences, professional development, and professional evaluations. In an interest to be more efficient and to take advantage of data sharing, a centralized system for all of human resources functions is needed. The division released a request for information, or RFI, in October of '22 to determine what systems may be available, their capabilities, as well as to determine next steps. 6 vendors responded to the RFI with capability and cost information. An internal review team of 27 staff members representing HR, finance, technology, cost center managers, as well as school administrators met during February and March of this year to review that information. On-site demonstrations of the top 2 candidate systems were conducted during May to June to show capabilities and provide an opportunity to ask questions. Final review sessions were conducted during July. PowerSchool's Unified Talent Suite was selected as the most capable and cost-efficient solution for the division. The modules within this combined system include applicant tracking, the school spring job board posting, Smart Find Express substitute teacher management, absence management, and HR records management. It will also allow for sharing with the Perform and Professional Development modules, which the division already uses. This allows for a true combined and centralized HR management suite. The first-year cost, which includes implementation services, is $107,444.45, which is allocated within the ESSER 3 funds. Following years, the cost will be $60,161.18 per year, which will be part of the operating budget. The purchase would be made using the TIPS contract 210101 to PowerSchool. Thank you, and Mr. Baker and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah,
Yes, Michelle.
Did you mention how many years this contract's good for? Is this 5-year contract?
The TIPS contract, I don't have the expiration date of that in front of me, but I could certainly find that. Given that it is on the TIPS system, those are typically renewed on a fairly ongoing basis. So it should be available to us, but I can certainly find out what that expiration date is for that contract.
So it's a renewable contract is basically what you're saying?
I'm sorry?
It's renewable annually?
Yep. Well, I'm not exactly sure of the exact expiration date, so I would have to find that out for you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
There was a good amount of information you covered. I might have missed it. How many systems does this pare down into one toolbox?
Mr. Baker?
Sure. So currently we use it for our evaluation system and for our professional learning system. And so now we're going to add on the absent management system, like for substitute teachers and leave, and for the recruitment side of it and the application side. And then we're also going to add on the records, so to digitize all the records, paperwork, even including employee contracts.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay, while we have Mr. Landers and Mr. Baker, any final questions or comments? Looking to take this up at our next meeting? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. If there are additional questions as we're thinking it over the next 2 weeks, maybe submit an SBQ. Get those answers. All right, and then finally, our final proposed agenda item, 5.5, review endorsement of the Matoka Safe Routes to School project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Snipes is back again to tell us about yet another project this evening.
Yes, it is the Operation Show tonight. So tonight's proposed agenda item and being brought for your consideration is the review and endorsement of the Matoka Safe Routes to School that supports Goal 4 of the strategic plan. Many of you are aware that we've done this before, as with Clarabird Baker. We've County Safe Routes to School project. And this is similar, as the Virginia Department of Transportation Safe Routes to School program is a grant program that assists interested schools in the development of plans, activities, and infrastructure for improvements to make bicycling, walking to school safe, and to make make it an appealing transportation option for students. In earlier 2023, operations staff began spearheading a process to improve the travel path from Green Springs West to Matoka Elementary School using the VDOT Transportation Alternative Program, otherwise known as TAP. This includes coordinating with Timmons Engineering to develop options, help complete the VDOT applications, hold kickoff meetings, survey the Green Springs Homeowners Association, conduct site work, and do environmental due diligence. The Green Springs West Homeowners Association supports the venture. WJCC and Timmons Group will be hosting a forum which will provide the reasons for the project and the proposed solutions and explain the project, and feedback will be garnered from before submitting the final application in October. The program primarily funded by VDOT. However, as a grant award winner, if we are awarded it, we're required to contribute a 20% match to the project. The estimated total cost of the project is $1,196,892. A 20% match for WJCC would equal $239,378.40. The superintendent recommends you review the endorsement of the Matoka Safe Routes to School project and be prepared to vote at the September 19, 2023 school board meeting. I'm here to answer any questions if you like.
And that endorsement is in the form of a resolution, is
That
that right?
endorsement is in
And that
form of resolution that should be attached, I believe.
Is under your executive content there.
Right, I saw the resolution. So this is, I'm going back to the meeting where we had a lot of parents come and talk to us. Is this, so basically it's encouraging walking, bicycle riding, et cetera, to Matoka. So is that going to take Green Springs West and look for ways to make ways a safe way for the kids to get to Matoka without getting on Centerville Road?
No, we were adding this as part of the Safe Routes to School program. We saw a need for it as students, if they decided to bicycle or parents decided that they could get to school in another way, they could do so. For example, as I said, we did the same match for Clarabird Baker for their Safe Routes to School, and it had nothing to do with the non-transportation zone. It really is the operations staff just looking for better ways for kids to be able to get to school. And that may be in any form we want it, that the parents decide.
Sure, I understand.
Sort of.
She had her hand
Oh, we'll come back to you, Ms. Hummel. Ms. Whip.
What would this essentially expand the potential for non-transportation zones?
It could, yes, ma'am. Non-transportation zones, we look at a number of criteria. It's not just if they have a travel path, because the non-transportation zones, as we continually say, we're not telling parents that students have to walk. We're just saying that transportation is not going to be provided.
Ms. Hummel.
That was when I heard all this, I was thinking along with Mrs. Young that it was kind of tied to non-transportation zones because it's got a price ticket of like over 200,000. And so I always weigh that against, the cost of paying school bus drivers and, I think that's where my mind goes. It might not necessarily, I know it's a grant. It's like shopping math where you've got a lot of money that someone's giving you, but you've got to pay a lot of money in order to get the grant. And so anyway, my shopping math mind is looking at 200-some thousand, and then I'm looking at non-transportation zones and all the complaints that we're getting, and I'm just posing the question, does operations kind of look at that, and the administration maybe the big overall like 200-some thousand dollars and the cost of this, and is that I don't know. That's where my mind is. I don't know whether anyone else is.
I can understand that. The county is putting in a grant for Laurel Lane as well. They've started that process for a TAP grant as well. I think we look at, like I said, a number of variables when it comes to non-transportation zones. It's not just whether the students have the access through a walking path, but.
And to expand on that, the path that was created at CBB did not necessarily facilitate the use of a non-transportation zone there. So I think back to Mr. Snipes' point that in each individual instance, we would need to look and see, is it practical? Is it appropriate? Might it increase the opportunity? I think that's a fair statement. At the same time, making a commitment to $200,000+ in a one-time cost is different than salary or additional FTEs, which would become a recurring cost. So in some ways, I'm not sure it's a fair comparison to say, could you take X money and use it for personnel, and unless you were willing to do that on an annual recurring basis that allowed for additional staff, or if those additional staff members could actually be hired, which I think becomes the other part of the equation.
Thanks for that explanation.
Ms. Donner and then Ms. Hundley.
So looking at the schematic of the layout, so it looks like there's the Green Springs West Homeowners Association, which would provide easement, and then it looks like there's a little piece of property that belongs to someone. So is that person on board to allow the children to cross there?
We have had conversations with the homeowners association, and we've been out to their meetings, and yes, they have not presented any issues that currently we would say they're not on board. So we have had those conversations with the homeowners association. But again, it's going back to what Mr. Keever said, it requires some coordination. It would require a crossing guard. I mean, it requires more than just putting in the access. Brickback Road is a long road, and speed limits and those things have to be taken into consideration.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Hundley.
And what happens for inclement weather? Because I'm thinking this would probably be nice in the late summer, fall. What about winter? And do we anticipate that group of students going back to buses and then having?
We have not considered Matoka as a non-transportation zone, so I wouldn't.
Okay.
I mean, in regards to non-transportation zones currently, we advise students to be at the bus stops 10 minutes early, so they're out in the weather waiting on a bus, or would they be in the weather traveling to school? It's still, they're going to be out in the weather, so.
So the primary, just so I understand, it's not to promote students getting to and from Matoka from Green Springs for the start of school or not? It isn't?
A Safe Routes to School program is traditionally designed to get kids to bicycle and to walk. But again, our non-transportation zones are not specifying that kids walk to school. It's saying that they're not being provided, that transportation is not being provided. So
I think it could be for any reason. How might you, as a young person, get to a school campus safely? I think that's the idea behind the grant in total, not necessarily promoting walking to school, but how might you travel to, for instance, if you wanted to go for an after-school event or activity or take advantage of field space that is available at a school, is there a safe route that allows you to do that as well? So I believe it covers the gamut. We're thinking of it, I think, in this context right now about travel to and from school in the morning or afternoon before or after school, but it is broader than that.
Has the division identified a number of students that are not within this location that are not using the bus services that might benefit from this?
no, if you're asking, do we have the number of students in this area that do not use bus service? Yeah. We probably have looked at that information. I couldn't give that to you right off the top of my head.
So it's $200-some thousand for the ability for kids, should they want to ride their bikes back and forth, but that the school system itself is still going to be providing whatever bus transportation they currently.
It's a possibility.
Because it's not considered a no transportation
right.
zone.
Currently, right now, it is a transportation zone.
Ms. Young?
Young?
Now I'm really confused. So So are we considering Green Springs West becoming a non-transportation zone currently?
I cannot answer that. We will as we review those because it's a lot of variables. The speed limit on the road. Do we have a crossing guard? You know, all of those things go into that when we look at non-transportation zones. It's not just because they have a travel path.
And initially, because of the 0.5 mile radius that we looked at the elementary school level, Green Springs or families that live within that neighborhood that came and shared their opinion about non-transportation zones with us, I believe in early May, we had considered Green Springs. We had considered areas in and around Matthew Whaley. We looked at the totality of the 0.5 radius, communicated with all families that we were studying that and looking at that, and then began to pull back based on the factors that Mr. Snipes mentioned, the multiple factors and rationales for why. I think our goal with Safe Routes to School is to look for additional infrastructure ways that we can support getting to and from school at whichever time and making that accessible for students and families. If that at some point leads us to come to the conclusion that this ought to become a non-transportation zone, we would certainly communicate that well in advance. We would have discussions about that. But I don't think it's necessarily appropriate or fair to say, if we build this area becomes an NTZ. I think that's not what our goal is in bringing this forward.
Well, where does the 239,000 come from?
We'll have to budget for it in the next fiscal year if it's something the board approves.
All right, I think we're winding down in this conversation. Any other comments or questions before we take this up in 2 weeks? We have the resolution to review. Please do review that. If you have further questions or comments, please get them to Dr. Herron and myself early so they can be answered and we can have a good understanding of where we are come late September. Thank you, Mr. Snipes.
Right.
All right, we're moving on to our action items. 7.1, we're going to approve personnel actions as presented this evening. Is there a motion?
I move to approve personnel actions as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Ortego. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Ms. Aller still there? Yep. Ms. Aller?
Mrs. Ortego.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Miss Hummel.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye. Item 7.2, is there a motion toward contract to request for proposal 2024-0143, special education related services and associated budget transfer?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve award of contracts for request for proposal number 202-40143, special education related services to the following companies: Allied Instructional Services LLC, 3 Chords Inc., and Therapy Travelers LLC, collectively DBA Epic Special Education Staffing, KW Metropolitan Sign Language Interpreting Services LLC, Maxim Healthcare Staffing Services Inc., Milestone Speech Therapy LLC, Mundi Speech Therapy PLLC, The Therapy Spot LLC, DBA Pediatric Developmental Services, Pioneer Healthcare Services LLC, New Direction Solutions LLC, DBA ProCare Therapy, Soliant Health LLC, Sunbelt Staffing LLC, and Stepping Stones Group LLC, as well as an authorization for a budget transfer from salaries and benefits to contracted services for up to $500,000.
Thank you, Ms. Donner. You're off the clock now. You're good. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Any questions I think we have or comments? Dr. Brown here with us? Okay. All right. Ms. Aller?
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Miss Hummel. Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortego.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye. Finally, item 7.3, we have a approval of release from compulsory attendance case number R2324-05. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the release from compulsory attendance for case number R2324-05.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Is there a second on this motion?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ortego. Well, we won't do that on this item. Ms. Aller?
Mrs. Young,
Aye.
Mrs. Donner,
Aye.
Miss Hummel,
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley, Mrs. Ortigo,
Aye.
Mr. Dow.
Aye. Okay, we'll move on to board member comments. If we can start with Ms. Donner.
We are back to school. It was, my family laughs at me, but I get so excited when I see the school buses on the road. And so it was just exciting to see them. Some of them looked like they were practicing their routes before the bus for the school year started, and to just see all the kids and the excitement as they entered the buildings and were there for open house. So just excited about that, and then also having the opportunity to do the kickoff of convocation with faculty and staff. And just, we are off to a great year and the big mo.
Ms. Hundley.
Guess you'll have to call Mr. Baker and I the children whisperers, because we went to 3 schools and they were quiet as church mice. It was like a lockdown. It was so quiet. So we went to War Hill High first, and they were busy going over it was the second day of school, so they were just going over procedures and things like that. And we went into one art room, and they had a hard task to draw something hot and something cold. So that's what they were doing, getting their skills up. And then we went to Hornsby next, and we were blind leading the blind. We didn't really have a tour guide, but we found all 3 floors, and again, it was quiet. And the kids were all working, and there wasn't a lot of movement. And I just remembered, I said, this is the honeymoon stage, because I remember as a teacher, we called that a honeymoon period for about 2 weeks. But we're going to hold on to, that's going to be the flow for the year. And then we went to JBB with the Busy Bees, and that's such a beautiful school, and just all the artwork, it just makes you just really happy to be there. And so it looks like everybody's off to a great start, and I think it's going to be a great year.
Thank you, Ms. Hundley. Ms. Young?
I enjoyed convocation. I thought that was fun to see what was going on. I do think we have some momentum. We're going to keep that going, and I'm glad that school has started again. And I noticed that my neighborhood is dead silent. That's all I can say. So, because I know where all the kids are, they're at a school where they're supposed to be. But I'm glad that school started, and I want to thank faculty and staff for getting us back on the road again. And thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Ms. Hummel?
Same as my colleagues, I'm excited to see school starting, and also appreciate all the hard work that administration and faculty, staff, everybody does right before school gets kicked off, because it's a lot of work to plan convocation, to plan getting the teachers getting into their new classrooms, and just that buzz of getting ready for the kids to come, and then once they come, just the excitement of having everyone settle into place and actually start doing the work of educating. So, congratulations, everyone.
Ms. Ortega?
I just want to commend Dr. Herron and Mr. Baker and his team on getting us to the staffing levels that we're currently at, which is quite amazing given the trend in our region and actually across the nation, that we I think only had 4 positions, was it, that we were short out of many, thousands, which is incredible. It was hard work done all summer, and I know that a lot went into that, and we can all be very proud of that. Welcome to any new teachers to our division, and welcome back to anyone who's returning. Welcome back to all the kids, and just looking forward to a great school year, and encourage everyone to, as Dr. Herron encouraged us at convocation, to just every day remember your why, because that is why we get up and do what we do, whether it's hard or fun or stressful, but that's why we do it. So thanks.
Yeah, great job, Mr. Baker and team, and just I really had no doubt. It was just a matter of when, and of course, yeah, you pulled it off fantastic. And Mr. Snipes and your team at Ops, thank you for all of the presentations and the work. It just never ends, and I wish that more people in the community tune into those portions of our meetings where they see all the work that's gone on through the summer. It just never ends, and you guys are just faithful to put the division and children first. I really appreciate you guys. Move on to our upcoming events. We've got on September 14th Special Education Advisory Committee meeting at 6:30, room 309 here at the annex. And then on the 15th, the Policy Committee's meeting at 8:30 in the morning, room 108 at Central Office. There's a school board candidate briefing. I believe there are 6 candidates that we'll be meeting with on the 15th at 8:15 in the morning, right here in room 300. And then the VSBA Legislative Advocacy Conference on the 21st of September. That's all day. It looks like, is it just, no, it's virtual and in person in Chesterfield Career and Tech Center, Midlothian. All right, and then upcoming meetings. Got closed session on the 19th, followed by the regular meeting, 5:45 and 6:30 respectively, room 300, then James Blair Gymnasium. Closed session and work session on October 3rd, 4 and 4:30, right back here in room 300. All right, I believe the agenda is set for the next meeting, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.